For this solution to the lab exercise on dynamic views, we have created two activities, our list activity, which is our main launch activity, and our grid activity in a new project that we call Dynamic View Lab. We also have an adapter class called ListGridAdapter, which is an adapter for both the list view in our list activity and the grid view in our grid activity. Let's start with the XML for our list activity. We see the XML for our main launch activity, our list activity, is fairly simple and contains one list view, which matches parent in width and height, and has an ID of LV items. Now let's take a look at the XML for our second activity, the grid activity. Again, a very simple layout and has a sole child under the relative layout of our grid view that again matches parent for width and height and has ID of GV items. It is important to note that we define here that the grid view should contain up to 3 columns as per the instructions for the exercise. Now let's take a look at the code for our list activity itself. We see that in the onCreate of our list activity, we grab the list view with ID LV items and set an adapter with a new instance of the ListGridAdapter class. We'll look more into that class in a second. And then we set an onItemClickListener. In the onItemClickListener, we create a new intent to the grid activity class and put an extra intent extra UID with the int we get back from the adapter call getItem for that position. Then we start the activity as described in the requirements for this exercise. Let's take a look at the adapter now, in particular the getItem call for the adapter. First, let's look at the getItem call that we use to pass the integer for the value of the item when creating that new intent. We see that the getItem call, we create a new integer object with the position plus 1, since that is the formula for getting the value of any item for both the list and grid. Remember, the adapter has dual purposes for the list and grid in our application. Now let's look at the constructor for this adapter. We see that the constructor receives a layout inflator for creating our new item views, an adapter mode, and an int for the max amount of items. In addition to being able to know what layout to inflate, we create an adapter mode so we can also differentiate icons for the list items and for the grid items. If we look at the adapter mode enum, we see that it is a simple enum with two values, list and grid. We also have members in this class to store all the items sent in this constructor. Now if we look at the getCount method, we see that it simply needs to return the max items that were previously sent in the constructor. This means that in the list activity, we will send a constant of 30, and in the grid activity, we will send the max items that were received from the list activity, which refers to the items pressed on the previous screen, per the requirements of this exercise. We'll also see here in the grid view onCreate that we get an onItemClickListener and show a toast with a value of getItem for the adapter. Now let's go back to the adapter and take a look at the getView method callback. In the getView method, we calculate two booleans for convenience. One is if this adapter is in list mode, and the second if the item requested is an even row or position. We then inflate an XML based on if we're in list mode or in grid mode. Let's take a look at the list item XML. We see that is a very simple horizontal linear layout with two items, an image view with ID IV icon and a text view with ID TV value. If we look at the grid item XML, we see that it is almost exactly the same, but it is a vertical linear layout with an image view and text view with the same IDs. It is very important here that both XMLs have the same IDs for their elements, because this will allow us to grab them agnostically in the getView method call. Let's go back to the call now. Once we have inflated our view, assuming that the convert view is null, we grab our image view, and then we calculate the image resource based on if we are in list mode or not, and if we are in an even position or not. After the calculation, we set the image resource to the image view and grab our text view. We then set the text to the string value of the position +1, which is again the same calculation for both the grid and the list view. Now let's run our application and see how all of these components tie together. In our main launch activity, our list activity, we see our list of 30 items with alternating icons. If we click on an item, we see that it opens our grid activity with 3 rows and alternating icons for positions. The grid view contains items up to and including the item value we pressed. And the alternating icons differ from those shown in the list view. Thank you for joining us in this solution to the Dynamic View Lab exercise. Join us next time when we'll take a look at fragments in Android.